Hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today, and welcome to the Monarch Butterfly Conservation Webinar Series. Today's webinar topic is Awaŋyaŋkap, Protecting Sacred Land in Urban Areas. My name is Katie Lynn Bunny, Education Coordinator for the Monarch Joint Venture, and we're excited to continue hosting this webinar series with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's National Conservation Training Center. We're delighted to host this presentation from Wakaŋ, Tipi, Awaŋyaŋkap, and be joined by Jenna Gray Eagle and Gabby Menomin. Before we get started, here are a few expectations and community guidelines for the webinar today. During the webinar, please put your questions in the chat box, and we'll continue to collect those throughout the webinar session and save them for the Q&A at the end. Please keep the chat friendly and professional. Thank you in advance for doing that. If you pause or click away or refresh the page where you're viewing the webinar, you will need to click the play button again when you return. It will start where you left off, and if you want to catch up, you'll need to click on the slide bar at the bottom of the video window to do so. This webinar will be recorded and posted on both the NCTC and Monarch Joint Venture websites in 2 to 3 weeks. And the entire Monarch Conservation Webinar archive is free and available to watch. It contains about 7 years worth of Monarch Conservation webinars on both of our websites. If you're joining us today but didn't pre-register for the webinar, we'd like to count you for attendance and be able to send you the follow-up resources. So please email education@monarchjointventure.org with your name and email address. And finally, all of our webinar speakers represent their own viewpoints, which are not necessarily those of NCTC or the Monarch Joint Venture. And now I will introduce our presenters. Jenna is an enrolled member of the Oglala Lakota Sioux Tribe of South Dakota and is Wakaŋ Tipi Awaŋyaŋkap's environmental justice educator and stewardship coordinator. Since the KXL pipeline threatened treaty territory of the Dakotas, Jenna has been passionate about a world beyond fossil fuels and centering Indigenous voices, culture, and history. Jenna is also a beadwork artist, Indigenous gardener, and received a BA in environmental studies from Augsburg University. She believes that positive cultural and ancestral-based knowledge are vital components to Indigenous resiliency. Gabby is an enrolled member of the Forest County Potawatomi Community, Bullhead Clan of northern Wisconsin. Gabby recently completed her master's degree in tribal natural resource management with a minor in American Indian and Indigenous studies. During her academic career, she has focused on learning about our plant relatives and their communities and how climate change is impacting them. She is passionate about the environment and looking at how to center Indigenous voices, values, and knowledge in the stewardship of the land and our plant relatives. And with that, I will turn it over to Gabby and Jenna.
So hello everyone. Bonjour. Kwekabnok Tijinakaz. Skanchin Dujbaya Wasi and Dodem. Hello everyone. My name is Gabby Menomin. I come from the Forest County Potawatomi community in northern Wisconsin. And I am the Environmental Restoration Manager here at Wakaŋ Tipi Awaŋyaŋkap. And I'll let Jenna introduce herself really quick before we get started.
My name is Jenna Gray Eagle, and I'm the Environmental Justice Educator and Stewardship Coordinator here at Wakaŋ Tipi Awaŋyaŋkap, and I'm also Oglala Lakota. And yeah, super excited to be here to talk about our work.
All right, so today we're going to go into a little bit of background about our organization, the different programs that we offer, and how our programs relate to pollinator habitat and pollinator support as well. And then we'll finish up with some questions and answers at the end. So a little bit of background about our organization. So we were founded in 1997 from a group of people from the East Side neighborhood who had an interest in daylighting Phelan Creek. I'll get into a little more about the history about what Phelan Creek is. So they started the organization Lower Phelan Creek Project This year on April 3rd, we officially changed our name to Wakaŋ Tipi Awaŋyaŋkap. So we are no longer called Lower Phelan Creek Project, but we still hold a lot of the same values and that our old organization name held. So some of our mission here at Wakaŋ Tipi Awaŋyaŋkap is to engage people to honor and care for our natural places and the sacred sites and cultural value within them. Some of the values that we hold as an organization, we really hold some of the traditional Dakota values. These are at the core of our work, Dakota values such as kinship, respect, generosity, humility, compassion, and honesty. In addition to these Dakota values, we also value Indigenous leadership, authenticity, and the power of place. So we are currently a team of 10 employees, ranging from multiple different backgrounds. But one thing I want to point out is that we are an Indigenous-led organization. Our bylaws were recently changed so that Indigenous leadership would always be a focus of this organization. So our executive director, Maggie Lorenz, wasn't able to join us today, but she is the first of executive leadership for the organization that is Indigenous, with Indigenous background. So we've been thinking a lot as an organization about how we organize ourselves and areas that we work within, and we found 3 different areas that our programs fit into. The first one being urban conservation, restoration. Other program areas are cultural and environmental connections and healing. This also includes a lot of education as well. And another program area is land back systems, system changes and initiatives. In addition to a lot of our programs, we also have 2 major projects that we're working on. The first one being Wakaŋ Tipi Center. So this center, the dream and the drive behind getting this project completed is to offer a physical space within the Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary for our organization as we steward the land there and take care of the sacred site Wakaŋ Tipi, which can be found on site. So this place is supposed to represent a physical place for Dakota homecoming. This space will be used to allow for Dakota people to reconnect with the land with ceremonies that may have traditionally been held here, as well as education and community gatherings as well. So if you look on the map here, the Wakaŋ Tipi Center is going to be located at the northern portion of the sanctuary. Here are some of the landscape design plans for the building. I believe we're still officially waiting on the bonding bill to be passed, but hopefully we'll be starting construction here in the next couple of months and hopefully finishing by next year. So there'll be some more updates on that once we figure out how to fill some of our funding gaps. This is a really exciting project that other members of our team have been really involved in. The center, once it's open, is going to have a multitude of different features, including teaching gardens, exhibits that reflect both past and present Dakota people in the community. And we're hoping to do a lot of amazing programs at this space and finally have a real place for our organization to call home. And then before we get into the urban conservation restoration program, I'll talk a little bit about our other major project that we're doing, which is the daylighting project. I'll talk a little bit more about that once we get through this urban conservation restoration programs. So I'll hand it off to Jenna.
Right on. Okay. Yeah, if you can go to the next slide. So thank you, Gabby. I think that Yeah, so co-management of Wakaŋ Tipi, I know that that's another one of our huge projects that we're doing. So historically, the site has been, it used to be a city dump actually, and then the city decided to restore the area due to public interest. The community gathered around and created Lower Phelan Creek Project and wanted to really restore this area. And as Gabby was saying, that when people found out that it was a sacred Dakota site, they started transitioning leadership to Dakota people. And I think that it's a really beautiful history, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. And I think that to have a sacred site in the middle of a metro area is not easy, but it's definitely it's work that we're all really passionate about. And so some of the programs that we have in terms of co-management with the city is our restore events, and then we also have our very first annual youth program scheduled for this summer, where we're going to have 7 youth learn about stewardship activities and do cultural connections and healing, and basically all components of our org. We're going to start transitioning to youth in the Twin Cities area. And then we also have our annual Earth Day cleanup, and then we also have community stewardship programs with other partners around. A lot of people have also helped our organization in regards to stewarding this area. And of course, any and all help and restoration is always necessary, because to give up on a site, I think, is just because it's been so dilapidated, is something that a lot of organizations here in the Twin Cities have decided not to do with this site, and it's really appreciated, especially considering the history of it. And we also have the site monitoring and data collection that we do at the site, and other contracted work with partners. But yeah, I'll go a little bit more into other programs that we have. Gabby, if you go to the next slide.
Hold on, I'm not sure why. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so Restore events are a partnership program that we have with the city of St. Paul, where we invite volunteers out under a certain program to come and take out invasive species, or to come and help pick up garbage, or to do seed collection, certain activities all throughout the summer and throughout early fall, basically trying to restore the area back to something that is a lot that makes sense for the areas. So I know oak savanna, as well as floodplain forests, and I think there's up to 25 different. Is that right, Gabby? I think there's 25 different biomes within the site alone. So with the Restore, we get a lot of help in terms of having volunteers come out and help us make sure that invasives and anything else that's going to have a hard time, especially in consideration of pollinators. We always want to make sure that we have the plants and the ecosystems out there that best support them. And if you go to the next slide, please. And yeah, a little bit more about our youth program. So we're having 7 Indigenous youth this summer also help us with the restoration. So we'll basically have the stewardship skills instilled into our youth, as well as just taking care of the site. Our name means those who watch over Wakaŋ Tipi. So they'll come and learn about it. They'll come and learn how to do stewardship activities, as well as learn a lot about pollinators. And I think one of our big focuses that we want to teach them are monarchs, migratory birds, and dragonflies. So that's going to be our big focus this summer, and talking about how we as Indigenous people, we never see ourselves above or below plants and animals. And so that's kind of the culture that we want to keep instilling into not only this area, but Indigenous youth, so that they can take it into their careers. And we also hope that Indigenous youth can see that there are environmental jobs that they can have, that's not just activism, and it's not just policy work, but it's also, you can have your boots on the ground and actually take care of Mother Earth. And having access to the space, I think, is so important for youth. And so yeah, I think that this summer program hopefully is going to be really great in terms of teaching all those aspects of what we want to teach and what we want to bring to the broader community. And if you go to the next slide. And these are pictures from our annual Earth Day cleanup, as well as supporting pollinators. We know that making sure that garbage in the area is picked up is definitely a huge importance to us. So I think this year we picked up somewhere close to 5,000 pounds of garbage in the site alone. Every year it's always in the thousands of pounds. So I know that once we get the center up and have a little more infrastructure out there, that hopefully the garbage levels will be down. But yeah, every year so far it's been a few thousand pounds that are picked up at the site. And that's another partner program that we have with the city in terms of making sure that garbage is always try to keep it at bay as much as possible. And then as far as other partnership programs that we have, we also do a lot of BIPOC plantings and plant walks, and we also do some bird walks with Urban Bird Collective. So we always try to keep data around that in the area as well. And then we also try to host people and wanting to help us do invasive species removal. And just this past February, we also did a program called Seed and Snowshoes, where we went out and wore snowshoes and basically seeded and did plantings out in the middle of winter, because as we know, the stratification, cold stratification is needed for a lot of the plants to thrive, and especially in the prairie area. And what's really exciting is that we've realized a lot of it worked, actually. We've been out recently and realized that some of the seeds that we did plant are actually coming up, and it's really exciting to see that these processes can work. And then we also do K through 12 field trips where we host schools to come out and either do like water quality testing or to do plant walks or just to hear traditional stories from Fern Renville, who's our cultural Dakota educator. And yeah, there's a lot of us on staff that love teaching and love having these sort of skills brought out to schools, especially schools that can come outside and learn from us in a way that's very practical, in a practitioner type of way, as opposed to just learning about it in a book. Then they can actually come out and do it with us, and that's always really fun.
I can take these next two slides real quick, Jenna.
Yeah, for sure.
So part of what we do at Wakaŋ Tipi or Bruce Bento Nature Sanctuary is we do a lot of site monitoring and data collection with partners. So as Jenna had mentioned, we have a partnership with the Urban Bird Collective. Last year they came out once a month for 11 out of the 12 months of the year. And they recorded up to 150 or more species of birds on site. A lot of different warbler species, hawks, the eagles, woodcocks, as well as killdeer. And I will just say with the killdeer, there are 2 killdeer chicks on site this year, which is super exciting. And I think that's one way that shows that the restoration on site is working. It's bringing back wildlife that wasn't previously there. It's allowing for different species to be able to have their families on site as well. Another sort of data collection and site monitoring that we do is a partnership with MSP LTER. A couple summers ago, they came out and did a pollinator survey with some members of the community in our organization, where they recorded 21 different species of bees, lots of different bumblebee species, some red-belted bumblebees, some green sweat bees as well, 9 different species of wasps that they recorded, 23 species of butterflies and moths. Monarchs were very commonly found on site, as well as the skipper butterfly, and there were 5 beetle species that were observed as well, just within those pollinator surveys that they did that one summer. And I will just say that rusty patch bumblebees have been found near our site, although there's not a confirmed sighting on our site, but we're doing the prescribed burns. We're putting out the food for them, the bee balm and the other flowers that they enjoy visiting. So we're hoping to be able to see some rusty patch in the near future here. And in addition with MSP LTER, there's also been data collection done on site on soil quality, water quality, some invertebrate testing in the stream and the wetland areas on site. And this is a relationship that we're hoping to continue with and expand on as we try to figure out what data collection that we would like to see from our site, because the data collection does help with figuring out what sort of restoration that we need to do on site. Let's see. And then some other stewardship that happens at Wakaŋ Tipi. So we have our contracted work that we've been doing with Friends of the Mississippi River over the last 4 years, where they subcontract out with Land Bridge Ecological as well. And they do prescribed burns on site, as well as some spot spraying and mowing in certain areas. And while this has been an amazing partnership and a lot of restoration work has been done, especially when it comes to the herbicide use, we know that herbicide use isn't the greatest for our native pollinators. So we're hoping for the future, and this will come out of the co-management agreement, which I'll speak about a little bit later, with the City of St. Paul, where we would like to make some decisions about how exactly restoration is done on site that supports our values as an organization, that supports our Indigenous values as well, being in relationship with the land and the other creatures that live out there as well. Jenna, did you want to talk about the gardens?
Yeah, so as Gabby was talking about, like how we kind of want to take a little more ownership too, I think it's important to remember that due to the Religious Freedom Act of 1978, that our culture and our people were not legally allowed to practice our stewardship skills or our cultural knowledge. And a lot of our cultural knowledge is based on honorable harvesting, basically sustainable harvesting, and just making sure that we can be stewards of our own lands in terms of practicing our medicine and practicing our certain aspects of our culture that are really important. And so one of the biggest components of Wakaŋ Tipi Center that we want to have are the teaching gardens, where we can start relearning and reclaiming some of these practices about how to harvest and how to use our harvest and how to process our traditional foods that we had. And so we're really excited that we're going to be able to have gardens at the center where we can actually utilize the plants, and also teach about how to keep these plants safe for pollinators as well. Because as I was saying, we don't see ourselves above or below plants and animals, and I think that making sure that our space is safe for everybody, and that includes the pollinators, I think that that's something we're really excited to see during the once we have the center up. And then if you go to the next slide, please. And right now we're practicing that at the Rivoli Bluffs Medicine Gardens. It's Urban Roots. One of our partners has a beautiful garden site in East St. Paul at Rivoli Bluffs, and they've been kind enough to allow us the space to have our own plant medicines there and to start helping them restore the prairie there as well. And so we've had certain teachings and plantings and certain speeches, basically, as well as storytelling, and we're allowed to go and help steward that space and actually learn about sustainable harvesting and able to host volunteers there and basically practice our culture in a way that we haven't been allowed to do for a while. And so reclaiming is something that we're really excited to see with these gardens. And just a little bit more about the teaching garden. So yeah, I think that once we have the space, we're also going to have some interpretation there as well. So we'll teach the Dakota words as well as why it's important to Dakota people, and then have the common names as well as the Latin names on there. And just to help people see that, what plants are important to us culturally, because a lot of the times the plants that are important to us culturally, sometimes people see them as invasive or they see them as unwanted. And sometimes we're like, well, if we had more of these teachings and people could see the plants that are actually really important to us, that maybe people could start, learning that, people can utilize them in different ways as opposed to just taking them out all the time. And yeah, I'll hand it back to you, Gabby.
Yeah, so what we're doing with the co-management at Bruce Bento Nature Sanctuary and with these medicine gardens is we are really trying to show people that in an Indigenous worldview, everything is connected. You can't have culture, you can't have the restoration work, you can't have the plant knowledge without also having the pollinators, without having the wildlife, without having the specific plants growing on site as well. So everything we do is in relation with each other. We work with the plant communities, we work with the pollinator communities. We try to figure out how do we best support our butterfly relatives, our bee relatives, our plant relatives as well. And one thing that Jenna brought up is that foraging isn't really something that we are able to do, especially at Bruce Bento Nature Sanctuary, just because of the current laws in place in St. Paul and in Ramsey County. But something that we hope to look towards for the future, especially as we're able to move into the Wakaŋ Tipi Center when it's built, as we steward our medicine gardens and as we continue on with restoration at Bruce Bento, is we hope to be able to introduce more foraging into our work that we do legally, because what I've always learned from elders in my community is that being able to harvest, being able to forage, it's not just about taking from the environment, it's a relationship that you have with the environment, with the specific plant that you are taking from the earth. An elder from my community always talked about how he's noticing a lot of our medicine plants are disappearing because people aren't having that relationship with the plants anymore. And to think about it in a more scientific Western viewpoint of it, this makes a lot of sense. I will give the example of milkweed. You don't think of milkweed as being, or most people don't think of milkweed as being something that you can harvest and forage. But for my community and from a couple other communities, you can eat the buds as well as the new leaves. You just have to double boil them to get rid of the latex that's within them. And it's a really nutritious plant to eat from. And as long as people are practicing sustainable harvesting, not taking more than one or two buds from a plant, not taking from a plant that has monarch caterpillars or other caterpillars actively on it, also not taking more than a quarter of the population that you're harvesting from. This helps build a positive relationship with the plant because you're helping take care of that population that you are working with. So when you go to harvest, you are creating disturbances in areas, but this can also create more room for that plant community that you are trying to have a relationship with to come back next year. Another great example of this is wapato, or rat potato, I know it's also known as, which is a wetland species. This species does really well with disturbances and foraging from human beings. As we turn up the soil in these riverbanks and everything, we are actively aerating the soil for this, I believe it's the arrowhead plant that lives in the wetland. We are actively aerating the soil as we forage for it, and by the next year, those little potatoes are going to be bigger. There's going to be more of them. So I like to think about harvesting and foraging not as taking from the land, but you're having that mutual relationship with the land. People throughout time have always been a part of the land. We wouldn't have prairie habitats without Indigenous people stewarding the land. We wouldn't have a lot of our different plant communities if it wasn't for Indigenous people historically having relationships with different plants in the community. So people have always been a part of the landscape, and it's these sustainable harvesting practices that we are trying to move towards as an organization, that we are trying to teach people how to be positive and active within your landscape. These are the really big things that we are trying to move towards. and something that we are going to be exploring in our co-management agreement with City of St. Paul. So this is a big project that I will be working on, drafting up a management agreement with the City of St. Paul so that us as an organization at Wakaŋ Tipi Awaŋyaŋkap, we can take over the stewardship of Bruce Bento Nature Sanctuary and have that positive relationship with the land again, get our community back out there, get the broader community out there, and being an active part in the healing of the land, and being able to do it with Indigenous values and Indigenous worldview as well. So a lot of it is just that connection, that relationship with the land that we are trying to bring back to a very sacred site for Dakota people and other Indigenous people in the area as well. So to transition a little bit, I brought this up in the beginning. One of our major projects, one second. Okay, here we go. So another one of our major projects and another huge restoration project that we're doing is daylighting of Phelan Creek. So a little bit of background about Phelan Creek. So about 100 years ago, Phelan Creek actually used to run all the way from the south end of Lake Phelan all the way to the Mississippi. 100 years ago is when they put the creek in a pipeline underground. Historically, when the creek was above ground, it was used by many different communities. So Indigenous people had always used the creek as a pathway from the Mississippi up to Lake Phelan and in the Phelan chain of lakes to be able to access wild rice beds up in White Bear Lake. There was also a lot of traditional foods and plant medicines that were found along the creek as well. The creek supported a lot of different wildlife and pollinator populations as well. And so when the creek was put underground, that connection to the land and to the water and to the habitats that historically were around the creek, that all disappeared. So this brings us back to the beginning of our organization when we first became Lower Phelan Creek Project back in 1997. The community wanted to see the creek brought back to the surface. And when there was that connection, both realizing that Bruce Bento Nature Sanctuary is a sacred site with Wakaŋ Tipi, and how important Phelan Creek was to the Dakota and other Indigenous people in St. Paul. That's also partially why we transitioned into a Native-led organization. And so there's been a lot of work within the community to try to get this creek back up to the surface. And I want to say that we are getting so close to being able to bring that creek back. Currently, we are in the design phase for reaches 7 and 8, which is that first quarter mile at the south end of Lake Phelan. So about, I think it was last year, I believe, our organization was able to get the Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Fund grant, which will provide us with the funds we need to daylight this first section of the creek. And we just began our design phase earlier this month. We're hoping to move through the design phase in sections. So we're going to start off with 10%. We're going to go to 30% design, 60%, 90%, and then the completed design and groundbreaking will hopefully happen end of May, beginning of June next year, with construction following soon after, and hopefully construction ending early 2026. So these images I'm going to show you are were made possible by Damon Farber, who is a subcontractor to our water engineers, Interfluve. And so they've been creating these graphics and these visuals that we're able to share with community members to better show what our plans are with the creek. So, so far, what we have with the design is we have the creek running from Lake Phalen. There's going to be a culvert going under Wheelock Parkway. It's going to come into a wetland area. So historically, this whole section would have been a very large wetland area. So we're bringing back some of that wetland habitat, some of that riparian zone habitat along the creek, but we're also bringing in some of the upland prairie, music prairie, oak savanna type habitats that would have also historically been found in the area. And so there's a lot of reasons for bringing the creek back up to the surface. One of them being it helps a little bit with some of the stormwater mitigation in the current pipe that Phalen Creek is in. With the creek being brought back to the surface, it is going to take a little bit of the load off of the current pipeline that the creek is in. We're also bringing back natural habitats as well, including those wetland and stream habitats, the riparian zone habitats, and the upland habitats as well. We're hoping to be able to provide a number of different species of wildflowers that will help support pollinators in the area, because currently this whole space that we're looking to restore the creek in is pretty much lawn space with a few mature trees. So right now there's not a lot of pollinator habitat out there. So we're hoping with this creek we're able to provide some of the wetland pollinator species such as Joe Pye weed, some of the oak savanna and grassland species as well, such as bee balm, coneflower, things like that, to help support pollinators, bird species, and other wildlife relatives that may come back to this area as well. And so here's just kind of a cross section of what the creek may look like. We're hoping that we'll have a very nice trail system that will allow people access to the creek in certain areas. And oh, I forgot to mention, another huge reason that we're daylighting the creek is because we want to give Indigenous people and Dakota people access to those traditional foods and plants that would have grown in the area, as well as giving people access back to the the water as well. So this is all in the making. This is all just we're in the idea phase. So we're going to be having a community engagement session for the creek tomorrow at 5 p.m. at Metro State University. I believe it's going to be in the Great Hall from 5 to 7:30, where we're going to be able to talk with you community members about our current designs that we have so far, what people would love to see in the area as well, and how they plan on utilizing the space. So with that, I think, oh, and one more thing I wanted to bring up. If you want to come to a lovely pollinator event, we are hosting our annual pollinator festival on August 6th at the Phalen Park Pavilion. So we have a lot of different pollinator themed activities for the communities, especially for the littles. There's going to be some plant walks. There's going to be some art activities, as well as a lot of different vendors. And we're going to have some live music as well. So hope to see you guys at both the Daylighting Community Engagement Session tomorrow and the Pollinator Festival as well in August. And with that, I think we'll open it up to questions.
Well, thank you so much to Jenna and Gabby for sharing your work and your knowledge with us today. We are going to take the next several minutes for Q&A. If we don't have time to answer any question, we'll do our best to follow up with some specific ones. So if you're If your question doesn't get answered, please feel free to reach out to education@monarchjointventure.org, and we will do our best to follow up with you, particularly if your question is not quite related to today's topic. So let me go back to my questions document here. One of the questions that came in, and for those of you who are still listening, feel free to continue to put those in the chat. I know there's a little bit of a delay between what I am seeing and speaking, and the presenters are seeing and speaking, and what all of you are seeing. It seems to be about a minute today, so we'll hold tight with some other questions. But Jenna and Gabby, one of the questions that came in so far. Someone is wondering if yarrow is a plant in your teaching garden. They've been told that it's used for healing.
So for the Rivoli Bluffs Medicine Garden, we do have yarrow growing up there. We do have some yarrow growing just on site at Bruce Bento Nature Sanctuary. The specific plants that are going to be in the teaching garden at the center aren't quite decided yet, so that's why I didn't really get into that's why Jenna didn't really get into the details about the garden, because they're still in a little bit of the planning mode right now. But there is yarrow found at both the Rivoli Medicine Garden and at Bruce Bento Nature Sanctuary as well.
Someone else was wondering if you could share where they could find the plant medicine stories that they've seen mentioned on your social media.
I think you're referring to our Gifts of the Plant Nation series. We have those recordings posted on YouTube, I believe. Jenna, I'm not sure if do you know if the Facebook recordings are also on our Facebook page at all, or is it just the YouTube recordings?
Yeah, so they're posted on our Facebook as well as our YouTube channel. I think our recent one was on nettles, and that one's not quite posted to YouTube yet, but I'm pretty sure it's uploading. But yeah, you can find them on either Facebook or YouTube.
And then Jenna, when is the next Gifts of the Plant Nation webinar?
Yeah, so our next Gifts of the Plant Nation webinar is going to be on June 22nd from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And that one's going to be specifically about bee balm. It's a really culturally important plant to us, and so we're really excited to host that one. It's going to be similar to all of our other ones, about just talking about the cultural history, as well as the medicinal benefits, and then the ecological role of bee balm. And it's also known as wild bergamot as well.
Someone else was wondering if how they could, sorry, let me start over, find my words. Here we go. What pollinator projects or events could they participate in with Wakaŋ Tipi?
So currently we don't have any pollinator events coming up. We're hoping that once the center is built and we're able to be on site, have a physical presence on site, we're hoping to bring back those pollinator surveys that I had previously talked about that were done in previous years. But it's definitely something that we'll be doing in the future, but we've just had to put a pause on because of construction currently.
Wonderful. Okay, another question. Not sure if this is the right place to put this exact question, but they're wondering if you could share about the experience of doing a controlled burn in an urban environment.
I can't talk too much on this. The burns that were done on site were done before I started working here. I'm fairly new. I just started in October, so I'm not completely sure about the process, but I know just speaking from a general prescription burn type thing, I know a lot of what's taken into consideration for burns in urban areas is where residents are living, as well as obviously the weather, the wind speed, and everything. And then I know there's a pretty extensive permit process for the St. Paul area as well. but I can't speak too much on that because I'm just not super familiar with it.
Yeah,
Challenging.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I know that can be challenging in an urban environment sometimes.
Yeah, and I think too, when we've been talking to some of our friends who also do Indigenous stewardship, they talk about you know, reclaiming that as well, because I know Dakota people, a lot of Indigenous people did practice burns, and so trying to find those practices and do it in a way where it's not field based either is something that I've noticed a lot of Indigenous folks are doing, which we're really excited about. But yeah, as long as we don't have our center yet and are still working on our co-management plan, I think it's something we're going to really work on a lot in terms of how we can do it too, and do it in a way that's not harmful to pollinators as well.
Questions, here we go. Have you had any issues with vandalism in the educational garden, or is there a really high level of local engagement?
So yeah, at the Rivoli Bluff Medicine Garden, there hasn't been vandalism per se. I know there were some unsheltered folks living in some of Urban Roots's sheds that they have there. Unfortunately, one of them got burnt down this past fall. But other than that, people in the area are very respectful of the garden. I think the community has a really strong relationship with the garden because of all the work that Urban Roots has been doing with the community with their garden plots. So thankfully up there, we haven't had any issues.
How can people support the Wakaŋ Tipi Center? A lot of our audience today is maybe not necessarily from the Twin Cities area, but if anybody either local or from a little bit further away would like to support the work that you're doing there, how could they do that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing would probably be donations. We have a donations page on our website. So any little bit helps, especially with, it'll help also with the programs that we're going to be running at the center once the center is built too. So I think that's the biggest thing. And then just showing up to community events if you're in the area, if you want to travel to the area, showing up for community events also helps out a lot too.
Any right now, so if everybody who's still on has more, feel free to put them in the chat. We've got a few more minutes yet, but I have one. I would like to know from each of you, what is, I guess, the most rewarding part of the work that you're doing to you personally?
Yeah, so I guess I'll go first. So the most rewarding part of the work that we do is that, for me, is that I get to work with other Indigenous people in the Twin Cities. Coming from a forestry background at the U, I always felt very isolated from the Indigenous community on campus because the forestry department was predominantly non-Indigenous people in the program. So it's been really great to be able to have this community and work with the Indigenous community here at this organization, because I don't have to explain my values or my worldview to them. And it's just really special being able to have that relationship with the land as well. Even though I'm a guest on Dakota land, being Potawatomi, I'm not from here. My people weren't from here, but it's still very special to be able to work in such a sacred site. You really feel the energy when you go out there, and just knowing how much the land has healed and knowing that I'm a part of the continued healing of the land is really very special to me. And this place holds a special place in my heart forever. So, yep.
Yeah, I think I'm really similar. I think I've worked a long time in environmental movements and environmental organizations, and I think a lot of the time people don't necessarily respect or acknowledge that Indigenous people did live in harmony with the land, as Gabby was talking about. And I think that to be around people and to work with people that understand that, and we don't have to, have all these meetings and we don't have to constantly talk about how ancestrally our knowledge is really based on being on this land and taking care of it in a way that is good for everybody, not just humans, but animals and everybody else. And I think that sometimes I feel like environmental spaces often kind of shift away from that type of knowledge, when really everybody has Indigenous ancestry, and it's just finding our path back to that. And I think that to constantly give reverence to our ancestors, as well as work for the next 7 generations and making sure that our world is better, is definitely a huge part of a lot of Indigenous people. And I think that, yeah, it's just super exciting to also be working at a sacred site and to help restore it, and to have people question, I guess, what's in their area too. I think a lot of this work will hopefully help other people see in other areas. Maybe there are sacred sites where you live too, and maybe you can help support some of the tribes in your area that also want to reclaim and also want to culturally practice and have access to their sacred sites. And that really excites me. Yeah, I think I'll end it there. There's a lot of things that excite me, basically.
Yeah.
I could talk all day about it.
I can tell just listening to the both of you talk about the work that you're doing. One final question before we close out for the day: how can we bring more Indigenous values into land management? From this person, they say they don't have any tribes close to us, but they want to be respectful.
Yeah, I think just listening to what Indigenous people have to say. Indigenous people have a lot of generational knowledge about the places that they come from, the places that their people traditionally came from. So I think that's the biggest thing, is listening to Indigenous people. Inviting Indigenous people to speak for themselves whenever possible is also great. A lot of people think that it's okay to speak for Indigenous people, but that's a big part about bringing more Indigenous knowledge into places, is reaching out and asking for help, being able to be patient and make sustainable and real relationships with people is also part of the work in integrating more Indigenous knowledge into your life. And then there's also, the big reads that you can brush up on, like Robin Wall Kimmerer. Gregory Kahete has some great stuff about Indigenous knowledge and the environment as well. So those are just 3 ways that I can see you being able to incorporate more Indigenous knowledge into your life. I don't know, Jenna, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. I think it takes a lot of research and it takes a lot of commitment. And if you want to be an ally, I think that our organization is a great example of being a really great ally, because the people who started this organization were white folks that had no idea that this was Dakota territory that they were working at. And because they kept researching and because they kept working at it, they got it to this point now where a Dakota woman is leading our organization. And that took a very long time, but I think that their dedication to me is real allyship, because I think a lot of times people think that it just takes inviting someone to come speak or inviting someone to teach a really quick class or something is allyship. But to me, this organization, the people that started it were really dedicated. And, oftentimes they had to realize that Dakota people were exiled from this area. And so it's taken a lot of work in terms of them, finding those answers and inviting people and being really intentional about how they approach people as well. And I think that that's all the United States, all of Canada, all of Mexico is indigenous territory. So there is a tribe that was once on your land for sure. It is indigenous land. So if you just keep researching and keep asking those questions, I think that you'll find the answers. It might not be as quick as you want, but I think that just dedicating your time would be great.
Well, thank you both so much. That's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and to Jenna and Gabby for presenting today. And thank you also to NCTC for hosting the webinar, and to all of you for participating. We hope to see you for our next webinar in June, when we'll be joined by Dr. Kelsey Fisher, who will present on implications of movement ecology in conservation planning for butterflies. And that will be on June 27th at the same time, 1 p.m. Central Time. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you next month.